This video is to explain the previous video, which is about a model called specifics, on how to enable the client to tell you about their current situation in such a way that enables you to decide whether or not you've got a set of solutions that can meet their needs. So this is going to be a practical example called a sample conversation to actually scale or quantify the opportunity. Let's just go through this. So just a brief recap. We have questions around what's the current situation, how's that a problem or opportunity for you? What's the evidence to suggest it's a problem? Can you scale it? Can you size it? Can you put a financial value on it? The consequences of doing nothing. What would happen? Would it get better or worse or remain the same? And what would be the implications to you, that's you, the prospect, if actually you did nothing? What would that delay mean to you and the business? And then on the kind of upside, if you will, is what do you actually really want to happen? What's the future ideal? What would that look like? What would the evidence be to suggest you were reaching that or have reached your future ideal? How tangible could that be? What's the impact? What would that mean, say, to the number of calls or the number of leads that you get and the size of your business, and therefore how you then take on the competition? And then the constraints, what's been stopping you so far? So that's a brief run through of the previous video. Let's try to turn that into a conversation. Now, the great thing about this model is you don't necessarily know where the conversation will start. You could go into a meeting and say, how's it going? And if you enable the prospect to talk about what they want to talk about, they could actually start here and say, do you know what, I'm glad you're here because we need 30% more leads. We want to build an extra team and we want to increase our maintenance and e-commerce business by 25% a year. And of course, now that you know that, you could say, that sounds brilliant. So why don't you tell me a bit about where you are now? To put that into context, can you see how you can take from that stage and move it back to say, let's talk about that now, and what do you think's stopping you right now, and the problems that are stopping you? So that's a constraints question, and the problems would be this. Evidence, what do you have to show that how are you performing now? Are you tracking that? Is that something that you're doing online? Are you counting the number of calls? Is there a day in the week which is better for you? And so on. So let's take a plumbing business like I've used on several occasions, and let's assume that the current situation is they do installs, they do maintenance, they've got an e-commerce offer for trade and for customers directly. The competition is A, B and C. They specialise in specific brands of boilers, and the preferred calls to action are telephone calls, yes, because there's a sense of urgency, and there's also a lead capture form on their website. So that kind of establishes the kind of helicopter view. The next one, you can imagine questions around finding out about their problems, and they could tell you, oh look, we've got people sat around doing nothing, employees underdeployed, we're losing out to this competition, and you might then say, how do you know that? And that's an evidence-based question, and allow them to kind of talk about that. Is that everything right now? Have you told me everything about your concerns around the challenges and problems you face, or the opportunities you want to grab hold of? And they could say, yeah, that's it for now. And then you'll say, okay, well, just step back a bit. What would happen if you did nothing? And then you get a feel for their sense of urgency, commitment and motivation. It's like a thermometer for motivation to change. And they could say, oh, well, I suppose we've been going like this for a few years, it'll be a dip and it'll pick up. And then you could say, well, you could test them on this, test intent. What would happen if you did nothing for, say, 6 months? And they go, oh, no, 6 months, couldn't tolerate that. And then, of course, you're into, well, how come? Why is it more sensitive after 6 months? And they'll tell you it. They'll begin to tell you this. And can you see, without going through all of this, how you can work your way through the different levels of questions to enable a person to reveal their pain points, reveal what great would look like specifically, especially when you talk about the future ideal. Yeah, we want these more leads, which we've just talked about. And what would be the impact? Well, we want to dominate postcodes X, Y, and Z. We want to expand. But in principle, we want to future-proof our business against changing technology in the way people heat their houses, warm their houses and the way they go about buying maintenance contracts. So you're learning more about their road path of building their business, and all the time you're thinking, how can we provide a set of services that actually solves the problem or meets the need in such a way that they buy a one-stop shop. And can you notice, you haven't once talked about, we've got this product or that product. So when you come to summarize, you can actually then recall all of this, rather like a great doctor would do with a patient, and then finally say, based on what you've told me now, there are a number of possible options, and I think we should build a roadmap of a planned investment to do a number of things, and that might be around being visible, about building prominence, around being chosen well and elegantly. In other words, the on-page, on-site experience, whichever channel you're in, whether that's social media or whether that's a website. And then finally, reputation for products like this. How can you be sure that other people are saying what they need to say about your products and services, which is a real signal towards other people to want to buy your services? And back to the roadmap as we finish. When you give people the idea of a roadmap and you start them on a journey of, let's get this bit right first, what's the point of sending people and spending money on sending them to a website that doesn't convert that well? Or what's the point of doing that if people really need to know how well you've helped other people? You know, there was reputation management, and that's not in place. So you can build and build and build. And then I would like to think that every time that you've done a review, or that the in-life team then call to review, there's the next thing to talk about, which would be, how can we scale this around what you wanted from when we first met, and has that changed at all? So now if we document that and use it as an account plan, we've got a really good opportunity to influence our customers over years, rather than just the odd product opportunity hit. Have fun!